Welcome to Ken's Corner Podcast, Season 3. Get ready for expert analysis and rising wrestling stars. Now here we go with your host, Ken Judge.
Hi everyone, this is Ken from Ken's Corner. And I'm here today with he might not tell you he is, but he is definitely my Argos analyst. His name is Nick Small. How are you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing great, Ken. Thanks. I'm glad to be in your corner today. Getting to talk about some Argos football. We've started off free agency 2 days ago as of recording this, and really excited. There's a lot of new faces, a lot of people leaving, but it's a really exciting time of year because it's really, after the Super Bowl ends, it brings some new life into the CFL, and the attention's drawn back to our game and our league. So it's just really exciting time to be a CFL fan.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. As you have been, I'm a lifelong Argo fan. I know I'm wearing my Leaf gear tonight because as we're recording, the Leafs are playing tonight. So that should be an interesting game. But we're here to talk Argos. So we're going to get into all the stuff that you just talked about there, but we're going to start with how the season ended for us last year. I know you couldn't have been very happy about that. Let's go over how it went and your feelings on what happened to us last year.
Yeah, I mean, as we all remember, this was really a season that we've never seen from the Toronto Argonauts before. Even when you look at some of the great seasons they've had, like the 96 and 97 season with Doug Flutie, this Argonauts team coming into that game arguably surpassed that with tying the CFL record with the Edmonton, then Eskimos, for most wins in a season. And certainly momentum was riding high in that going into that game on Remembrance Day against Montreal. And yeah, what was really weird with that game, I mean, it just offensively the team just fell apart, and it's too bad to think about because this year, for so many times in games, the Argos were in a huge lead at halftime and they didn't need to really play hard in the second half. And that was kind of your worries coming into a game like this, a playoff game, an elimination game, with the expectations that they need to win it and trailing at halftime. What really hurt them, of course, offensively was the turnovers committed. I think the final score was 7 turnovers, and I think at least 4 of them were interceptions. I think 1 fumble, 2 were on downs. So that certainly killed them. And I think the thing that a lot of people forget in that game is that the defense kept them into that game for more than half of it. They had sacked Cody Fajardo, I think, 6 times. And normally you win those kind of games, but when your offense just comes to a complete halt, it just was really unfortunate. And I mean, you give a lot of credit to the way Montreal played defensively. You knew their secondaries were talented, but I think it also came as I think it was a little bit of an inexperience from Chad Kelly, having been pressured into a lot of scenarios where he tried to make a throw where sometimes you have to just kind of give up on the play and either throw it away or just run. And he did not do that to the extent we've seen in other games. But that being set aside, I mean, looking at it now that that's November, we're in February now. So 4 months from now, from that, we're looking ahead. It's going to be exciting, another new season. And as we'll talk about next, we've got a lot of extensions and re-signings and new faces coming in. Yeah. So, you move on from it. I was happy to see Montreal win. I was lucky enough to be at Tim Hortons Field to watch that game. It was a fantastic game to be at. Green Day was phenomenal with their halftime show.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, and you're happy the cup stays in the East and it doesn't go back to Winnipeg. I guess
that's very true as well. I want to take you back a little bit, but the last game that Toronto played against Montreal before that playoff game, I remember thinking, oh, Montreal might be a problem going into the playoffs, because we did win that game, but I believe it was on the last second block kick maybe, and we end up turning it around somehow and we end up winning that game against Montreal. But I think it was a bit of a luck that day, or a great play from the Argos to do that. So Montreal definitely deserved to win, but we're back at it this year for sure, Nick, as you say. And let's start going through some of your exciting, well, some of the guys that re-signed. Let's start with them, and then we'll talk a bit about the free agent signings that we've amassed so far.
Yeah, what you really saw with the way the Argos approached free agency, the big thing that was kind of the catalyst that really sort of changed what everybody thought the construction of the team was going to be like, was the departure of Corey Mace, the defensive coordinator from the last 2 seasons. He left to go and now take the head coaching job in Saskatchewan for the Rough Riders. And because of that, I think we kind of saw that there would be kind of a split in the defensive side of who was going to stick around and who was maybe going to follow Mace to Saskatchewan. And you saw a couple people go, but funny enough, it seems like the more controversial departure was AJ Ouellette going. But anyways, talking about the guys who are sticking around, I get to that because offensively, the core of the team really remains very much the same. So almost all of the offensive linemen, Isaiah Cage, Darius Sirocco, Dylan Giffen, DeJohn Allen today, they've all signed extensions on the offensive line. So Chad Kelly has the exact same core group of guys who are all-star award-winning guys last year. And then you look at on the receiver side, guys like Dejon Brissett, DeMonte Coxie, Richie Sindani, who played a little bit late at the end of the season. They're all guys who have signed extensions as well. So the approach for the Argonauts has clearly been that they want to keep the same core guys that has made Chad Kelly a good quarterback and was effective this past season. And so I think this is the right approach. The one difference you see in sort of the backfield again is Ouellette leaving, but then defensively, the big key guy that they kept sticking around is, of course, Wynton McManus, Mr. Toothpick. Absolutely phenomenal defensive beast, and was definitely the leader of this team last season. The year before, he was injured at the very end of the season and missed most of the playoffs in that Grey Cup run, but he was leading the league in tackles and was the the guy everybody was playing to and getting beaten by. And this year he stepped it up with Enoch Mwamba basically retiring. I don't think it's officialized yet, but it definitely feels that way. McManus steps up in that middle linebacker role and really took hold as the leader of that team. And so to have him return as well is such a huge win for this team. And definitely, I think one of the key parts of this defense going forward with a new coordinator who we don't even know is yet as Argo fans, which is hopefully we're going to find out sometime soon as free agency rolls along.
Definitely. Before we get any further into it, I want to address this trade that we made with Hamilton. The one, I believe it was Jordan Williams, the linebacker, plus 3 picks going to Hamilton.
Yeah.
We got 3 picks back, but what I want to talk to you about is the rights to talk to the negotiation rights to talk to Deontay Burnett, the wide receiver from the UFL. Do you have any insight into this player, and do you know how those negotiations have progressed?
To be honest, not a lot. I don't actually have much intel on him. I don't think he ever played with Kelly, so I don't think it would be one of these things where it was some guy he played with there. But what we've kind of seen, like with Chad Kelly as an example, he was someone that they traded the rights for when it was Nick Arbuckle. They traded to Edmonton, and they got the rights to Chad Kelly in that deal. So I gotta think that it's the kind of player that the Argonauts are going to be in a pretty good position to sign. And just looking at his profile, he's almost about the same age as me, funny enough. But he's been around the NFL. He's played for Tennessee, New York, San Francisco. Like, he's played for a good couple of NFL teams, so he has that experience. And I think what's valuable with guys like that is that they're really good at playing in that slot back position that we have in the CFL in really tight positions, whereas certain other backs have more speed and are able to play better for the deep ball with the wider field. But he seems like the kind of guy who will probably be better in some of these close receiving areas, breaking off on screen passes and then running for big gains. So but yeah, considering how the Argonauts have done with their negotiations list in the past, I think there's a very likely chance that he'll at least sign and be a training camp player, especially if now he's floating as a free agent in the NFL.
Definitely, it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses for us.
Mhm.
Yeah, so let's talk about the guys that we signed in free agency. What are you excited about that's coming our way?
Yeah, so looking at it, it's a pretty massive list. I have a spreadsheet on right now that I'm looking at, and it's 26 names long right now, of all new additions. And I mean, half of it is a lot of players who have came up from college or some XFL, UFL experience the last couple of years. Like just today, there was two DBs and one running back. Um, but it looks like the core groups of guys they're looking for defensive back players. I think first and foremost to take over those positions we've lost. Spoiler alert: we've lost guys like Jamal Peters and Darius Pickett, for instance. So guys like that to fill it.
And Leak.
Yeah, Javon Leak in the
Yeah,
running back position and kick
yeah,
returner. So any guys like that who can carry the ball is great. The one exciting one, I think, or the two exciting ones, I think, Tunde Adeleke signed from the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
yes.
They traded for him, or no, sorry, they did sign him from free agency. And so that's one huge addition, I think, who could potentially fill that Pickett spot maybe. And then another huge one they got in that trade where they got rid of Curly Gittens. They traded him for Jake Ceresna from Edmonton. And I really find that trade to be interesting because I know Curly Gittens was pretty popular, but he didn't really play a whole lot last season with Chad Kelly. And we saw when he did play, he wasn't quite the targeted receiver as he was with McLeod, Bethel Thompson.
Mhm.
So to have Curly be reunited with MBT and then getting a defensive lineman in Ceresna to play now with Sean Oakman, who re-signed today, yesterday.
I
And
I want to give you a couple of names. I don't mean to cut you off,
yeah,
Nick, but
all good.
actually one I cannot say, and I know you will be able to because Boris Beatty has left the Toronto Argos. So we got
Yeah,
our Liram. You say his last name for me, please.
yeah, Liram Hawrellahu.
Thank you. I'm actually excited to have him back. And please, if
Yeah.
you know anything about the man who came from Winnipeg, I think his last name was Clement.
Uh, oh, Malik Clements.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, I think he could, depending on what they do with Winton McManus, if he's gonna commit to core middle linebacker position, or if he's gonna play kind of that short side linebacker. Because before when they played with Muamba was the middle linebacker, and nobody wanted to play to Muamba because anybody who knows Enoch Muamba knows they would absolutely get crushed by him. So that's why McManus had all those tackles 2 years ago because they ran to him all the time. Um, Clemens could be in that similar kind of position where, depending on how you play them, you could probably play either guy in the middle or the short side linebacker, and then leave somebody like Adeleke to play what was kind of Pickett's role, where you're kind of a linebacker, but you're also a kind of a wide side, short pass defensive back. It's kind of a weird CFL. It's kind of the weird thing that you don't have in other football leagues. As I've mentioned before, I think if they ever brought back the term flying wing for that position, I think it would be quite fun to have. But yeah, another big addition there. And then they've also got two other guys from Winnipeg as well, Theodric Hansen and Kerfala Exume, at defensive line and defensive back respectively. So there's a lot of pieces that now can come in, and it sort of offsets some of the losses. Some of the defensive linemen that they've lost, like Dwayne Hendricks and Brandon Barlow to Hamilton. And they've still got guys like Robbie Smith as well, still playing on the end, and Flo Remalade. Like there's different names coming in, but there's still lots of players who are very capable. Lira Malaralahu is another one that's really interesting to me because he was really well liked in Toronto, and he played for a couple other teams. I think he played in Hamilton and
He
Winnipeg,
did.
if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah.
But then he left to play in the NFL. And like Boris Beatty, his loss kind of hurts me a little bit because he was always one of the first guys to approach us in like training camp and stuff. So him showing off the football and talking about rule changes and this and that, he was always willing to come right up to us. He was the guy who when we were showing off some of the new helmets, he was one of the first guys to show them off to us, which was really cool.
I appreciate you saying that, because the one time that I did get a media pass to go down and cover the Argos, I know you're aware of it, but the
Mhm,
first guy I got a chance to interview that day was Boris Beatty, and
mhm.
his young son was with him. He put him down, and I almost got taken out by a football from the young man. So I mean, he was gracious to give me a new guy a chance, and honestly, I didn't even know how close I was supposed to put the microphone to his face, because I've never done a face to face before that day. So I was
Wow.
thinking, I hope this big guy doesn't hurt me if I take out his teeth with my microphone. But yeah, I agree with your take on Boris Beatty. I want to ask you now. You've already mentioned a lot of guys, or probably the main guys who have left Toronto. What hurts you the most? Who hurts you the
Yeah, I
most?
mean, I think Beatty's probably one of the ones up there to me. Again, like you've kind of said, Beatty's proven he's a can-do everything guy, and we saw last year when punter John Haggerty had some issues and was injured for a couple games. Beatty could still punt the ball 70 yards down the field and still kick field goals as fantastic as he did all year. And then, but he could also still make tackles. Like not many kickers can do that. And yeah, it's not that I doubt Taralawa will not do a good job in Toronto, but yeah, choosing to go a different direction like that can hurt. Another guy I'm probably going to miss is Qantas Stigers. Just a phenomenal story for him. He played in I forget the name of it, but it was a really gimmicky kind of football league where it had like fan votes that would give players, they would let the fans vote to choose the formations or the plays, like really weird stuff like that. He never even played college. And then for him to go to the Toronto Argonauts and be able to start out at short side corner and then become wide side corner and then really fill in any gap that was needed to be filled. Stigers proved himself to be an incredibly capable defensive back. And in my mind, especially having that pro experience with the CFL, playing in the like the college all stars game there just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, he was absolutely phenomenal, and nobody even wanted to throw to him after the first couple plays because
Mhm.
he shut down everything that went to his side of the field. So he's definitely going to be a first round pick, I think, in the NFL. And whichever team decides to go that route and pick him as a defensive back is going to be rewarded with an extremely talented young athlete. So that's another feel good story. The other guy I'm going to miss is Adarius Pickett, the linebacker, flying wing, kind of part DB guy. Um, as I've said, I'm hoping that that some certain players are going to be able to fill his position, but Pickett was all over the field, and he was really good at disguising his blitz packages all season long to really completely mess with other quarterbacks. So that's another guy I'm going to miss. And then the third one I think that's going to be up there as a fan favorite guy that we lost to Saskatchewan with Corey Mace. Funny enough, it's not a defensive player, but it's running back AJ Olad. Thor decided to take his thunder to the wheat fields of Saskatchewan, and I know both him and Corey Mace are going to be absolutely beloved by fans in Saskatchewan. And I can say as an Argos fan that yeah, we're going to miss him here as well.
I agree 100%. That's my one player that I knew that I'll miss the most, especially his interaction with Greek Town Wrestling, because I do love doing my wrestling podcast. So I'm very active in the wrestling community as well. Actually, now I'm going to get you to let us know about your feelings on our season. How do you think we're going to do this year?
Yeah, I think we're still going to finish well in the standings. I think with what you've seen with the additions of some of the other teams, I think the East is going to be a lot better of a division. And we've kind of said that the last 10 years or whatever, where no, it hasn't gotten better. The West has stayed dominant. But even with some of the departures we've had, I still think that the roster that this management team has acquired is still a very solid lineup. Offensively, I think they're still going to be very capable, barring the kind of mistakes we saw in the East final. What's really going to be different is them defensively. There's probably going to be some games in the first half of the year where we just fall apart defensively and we do not have the same kind of bend but don't break defense. And that just comes with losing Corey Mace. And I mean, even at this point, with all the players we've signed, we still don't know who our defensive coordinator is. So you kind of question what kind of scheme they're even planning on running defensively. So I think on that side of the ball, you're going to still see a very high scoring offense, but I think you're going to see a defense that's not going to be as stalwart as they were last year. And then I'm hoping that by the later point in the season, they're going to be able to fix those problems, whether or not they need to sign or trade other players away, or just, the chemistry builds. Because unlike last year where of the majority of the core players stuck around to give it one more go and there wasn't a whole lot of change, this year there is a lot of change, and you always wonder if things don't really mesh right off the bat, or if it takes time, and a lot of times it does. But you even saw in Montreal, like they were not that good a team in the first part of the year, but they made their way to host the East semifinal, and they managed to build it together and make the march up to win the Grey Cup.
I agree. Sorry if you see my eyes go away from the screen there. I'm a single dad now, and my 13-year-old son with his headset just came on playing his Fortnite and tried to question me, and I was waving him away. We're talking
All good.
Argos, son.
All good. I'm darting around looking at this spreadsheet I've got as I go. I'll probably I'll have it posted up on social media later as
Awesome.
updated additions,
Well,
extended and released
that's
charts.
actually a good question. Where can we find Nick Smalls? Where can we find you in social media if people want to look up your work?
Oh yeah, good question. So the best way to find me is on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it now. Nick_small_38. That's where I post my kind of takes on CFL stuff. And if you're interested in curling or any other sports, I'll occasionally offer my 2 cents on that there. But yeah, primarily Canadian football or curling. Those are kind of the two things I cover a lot. I am on Facebook, but I don't usually post that much on it. But if you're in any of the kind of core Argos Facebook groups, I'm probably in there. So if you want to connect, you can also shout out to me there.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. We're just going to run through the rest of the CFL real quick to finish us off. Give us a brief on what do you see across the world of Canadian Football League?
Yeah, well, as I said, I think what's been really interesting is that the East has kind of made a lot of the bigger moves and the bigger gains on players. I think if I had to pick like winners and not so winners of the free agency just at this point, I think in the winners column, you got to put both Ottawa and Hamilton, as well as Toronto. I think like Toronto, they lost. You knew they were going to hemorrhage a good number of players this year. But when I look at some of the guys they've managed to acquire, guys like Kaneem Carey, um, um, and Jake Serezna, and Haralaku and guys like that, like they're able to fill some of the gaps that they lost before. But then Hamilton, I think, has made some good additions. Funny enough, by poaching mostly Toronto players and guys like Barlow and Hendricks and Peters
Happens.
and Jordan Williams. But if you can't beat them, join them, I guess. So
Yeah.
and the good thing is they don't have to move far down the QEW to play for them, which is nice.
Seems to happen a
So
lot.
yeah, and I mean, and especially with the announcement there of Simone Lawrence retiring, which as an Argos fan, I have a tremendous amount of respect for him because although he kind of pushed things to the edge sometimes, he was never a dirty player. He
Yeah,
always gave it everything he got and was always hard. And you respect that and you're envious of that because of how good a player he was and for so long. So I had to decide to congratulate him on his retirement and his new role. He's going to do great with player relations in Hamilton. And then
I agree.
Ottawa, I think they're the other team that's made some really good acquisitions. I just have Toronto's list there, but of course, acquiring Pickett and Darius Bladek are two huge acquisitions. But they've acquired a couple other players as well, and I think they're continuing to make that step forward where they can probably challenge for that playoff position now, where they've kind of faltered back in the past. And then just kind of looking westward. Saskatchewan, I think, is a winner, and I think it's just not so much even the players they've acquired. Like they've acquired a couple guys, but a lot of it is just the culture change with Corey Mace joining as the new head coach. I think it's given the team a lot more positive energy and sort of a breath of fresh air. And to get AJ Oled in there among a couple other players is huge. BC's made some additions as well that I think is going to help push them over the limit. And I think Edmonton's made some good moves too. Again, kind of seemingly taking mostly Argo players, but like Curly Gins, Javon Lake, and Boris Beatty, they're I think all going to really like the fans in Edmonton, and McLeod Bethel Thompson is going to mesh well with all these guys who he knew from their time in Toronto, and I think it's a pretty good strategy on their part. And then I think, if kind of with those other teams that I've not spoken about yet are kind of the not so winner so far. Winnipeg, I think, has lost quite a few players. This might be kind of one of the years that's going to be really testing on that sort of dynasty questions. And like Toronto, I think defensively they're not going to be as strong. Calgary, I found, has not really done a whole lot. And then Montreal, with having won the Grey Cup, I worry that, like, I don't want to bash Montreal, but I worry it's going to be like the Toronto Argonauts from when they won the Grey Cup in 2017, with the team that you might argue probably shouldn't have won with the record they had. And then the year after, they just kind of
Bottomed out.
I mean, to be fair, the problem with them that year was that Ricky Ray got hurt the first game of the season
Yeah,
and ended his career. So, I mean, if that had not happened, things might have gone a little bit differently. And I doubt that'll happen in Montreal. Like, I really do like Cody Fajardo. And I'm really happy for him that he managed to finally get that Grey Cup ring. He was a guy who I was always rooting for, even in his time in Toronto. I thought he was kind of overlooked a lot of times. So for him to kind of prove the doubters wrong and to get that, and kind of with Jason Moss as well, the way they meshed really well, and it kind of went from being sort of seeming as Montreal being kind of a place for a bunch of nobodies that had been brushed off by the rest of the league to go and win that Grey Cup was very special for them. So, but yeah, I felt like they haven't done a whole lot yet at this point, but it's so early in free agency. There's tons of time, and we really never know in camp what's going to happen, because like some of these guys from college, like the Argos list alone, half of the list I have, so like 15 names, are all guys from college they've signed. So some of them will be able to break out, others will get cut. But it's all about keeping that pipeline fed, and it's what makes the CFL exciting with all the new faces.
yeah, I agree. I do have an early Grey Cup favorite.
Well, it's kind of hard to root against the Argos still. I think, with reigning MVP, MLP Chad Kelly,
Your
and
your
with a lot of
second pick, your second pick.
okay,
That was a bad question. Obviously, it's the Argos.
yeah,
I agree with you.
yeah,
But
yeah.
who would you think if the Argos cannot, for some foreseen reason, pull it off for us this year? Who do you think?
If it had to be that case, I would really like to see an Ottawa Edmonton Grey Cup, which would be really weird, but I think the way that they've worked on rebuilding with the individuals they've got and kind of where they've been, if they both could miraculously kind of turn it around and do that, I think would be pretty cool. I can lean towards BC as well, just because with them being the hosts, I think there's definitely a lot of pressure there. And it's been really interesting to see what's going on with Vernon Adams there. He'd be a guy who could really use a Grey Cup win to kind of jump up to that next level of elite quarterbacks. And then Saskatchewan too. I think Saskatchewan's probably the least likely to happen, just because it's really hard to find immediate success like that with a huge coaching change. But if there's anybody that could do it, I mean, we saw what um, Corey Mace was able to do here in Toronto, so he could definitely make it happen there, and it would be huge for that Rider fan base. But yeah, I think I'll say BC first, then Edmonton, then Saskatchewan in the West, and then yeah, if I had to not pick Toronto, I mean, I can't pick
Yeah.
Hamilton, right?
No, let's not get this twisted. We do think the Argos are going to win the Grey Cup this year, just for anyone that wants to hear that. We're sadly, we've come to the end of the show today. My time is actually running out on me, Nick, but
Yeah.
I do want to say congratulations to the NFL Kansas City Chiefs. I
hmm
can't say I'm a Chiefs fan, but they earned that win. They definitely did, and they got quite the dynasty going on there. And I
Yeah.
also want to address what happened during the parade. That's just nonsense, and it doesn't belong in sports or in any rural street, a city street. That's for sure. So I don't know if you have any last comments that you want to add, and we'll call it a day here, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, congrats to Kansas City, and yeah, it was really really disheartening to hear what happened, and that a lot of innocent people get caught in the crossfire because of a grudge of two people disagreeing over something like a football game or whatever. So yeah, my condolences out to the families and victims involved. And I mean, it's something to think about, what we take for granted sometimes here in Canada, and also just as fans, that what we try to treat ultimately as a game and something we're passionate about as fans as of the sport, that to not take it too seriously, that to take out lives over it. It's disheartening to hear that.
Definitely, definitely. Well, it's been awesome to have you on here today. I know we've bounced our times back and forth. You're a pretty busy guy, so I appreciate you coming on here today and talking everything CFL. And anyway, I'm just going to sign off, Nick.
Yeah.
My name's Ken, and I'm from Ken's Corner. And today I am with, no matter what he says, I am with the Argo analysts and CFL analysts, Nick Smalls. Thank you so much, and it's been an honor, Nick.
Thanks, Ken. Always a pleasure. And if you ever want to talk CFL again, just reach out to me. I always love chatting about my Argos.
Oh, we'll definitely will. I'm going to be back seeing you mid-season, I'm sure. You have a great day, sir.
Thanks, you too.